world is going electric, and there's nothing we can do about it. Even Mazda, a relatively small automaker with a tiny lineup of cars, they know that if you don't get your EV assembly lines running soon, by the time you do, it might be too late. And that's why today we're looking at the 2022 Mazda MX-30. Now, is this a groundbreaking electric car? Well, for Mazda, it kind of is. Make sure you subscribe to the CarGurus YouTube channel and then hit the bell so that you get an update every time we publish a new video. And now let's take a look at the MX-30. It's not quite a classic beauty. I see a little more of a mishmash of designs going on. The front has shades of the CX-30, and the cladding around the wheel wells is aggressive considering this is a front-wheel drive crossover. And the fastback profile cuts into cargo space and it provides massive blind spots. The two-tone paint job works on a lot of vehicles, but on the MX-30, I keep seeing shades of the GMC Envoy XUV, and that's not good. But there are a lot of parts to the mishmash that are good. I really like the wheels, and I like Mazda's round tail lamps. The hood looks long on a car this short, and the overhanging lip combined with the cutout headlights is cool. I just overall like the dimensions of the MX-30. Now, the freestyle doors, these definitely harken back to the Mazda RX-8, with which the MX-30 might eventually have some commonality. I will say, I could do without the little electric sticker. I mean, this is just a sticker. When I sit in the Mazda MX-30, I actually think a lot about the BMW i3, a car surprisingly similar in a lot of ways. The i3 had this wild interior. It had wood trim and nice materials, a very organic feeling, but it was polarizing. You either loved it or you hated it, and spoiler alert, I loved it. Now, the MX-30's not as wild as an i3, but it's also not going to be as polarizing. It's just pretty cool in here. First off, there are these cork inlays below and around the center console and on the door handles. There are even little cork covers for the cup holders. You can fold them down and you have this nice little shelf. It's kind of innovative. It's perfect size for my phone. Maybe your phone, maybe not. Your phone might be bigger. And then with the shifter, it does this little two-step function to shift in and out of park. It's weirdly satisfying. The gray cloth upholstery with brown accents looks really nice. From Volvo to Ford to Nissan and now to Mazda, this sort of upholstery is really coming back into vogue and I am here for it. But what do you think about it? Tell us in the comments section below. The rest of the MX-30's interior is pretty typical Mazda. The driver information display is refreshingly normal for an EV, and like it is on the CX-30, the Mazda 3, the CX-5, the infotainment screen is up here, and it's not a touchscreen. It's not a touchscreen because Mazda believes that touchscreens are inherently dangerous. You know, taking your eyes off the road to punch around on a screen means that you're not focused on driving. Now, ironically, the HVAC controls, those are controlled by a touchscreen, and it's a touchscreen that's all the way down here. So it's not okay to take your eyes just a teensy bit off the road and control this, but you can move them all the way down here to control this. That seems a bit hypocritical, although I guess you can only get so distracted by air conditioning and heated seats. Despite being an EV, the MX-30 is built on the same platform as the Mazda 3 and the Mazda CX-30. That's hugely important to consider when talking about the MX-30 because most electric vehicles are built on ground-up platforms specifically designed to accommodate electric motors and batteries. But Mazda doesn't have one of those. It's just working with what it's got. Now, there is an EV architecture in the works, but it's not supposed to be ready until 2025, and Mazda knows that if it waited that long, it would be at a competitive disadvantage, so it's gotta move now. So what's under the hood? Well, get ready to raise those eyebrows. It's a single electric motor making 143 horsepower, 200 pound-feet of torque, and running off a 35.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack, good for about 100 miles of range. Yeah, that was my reaction too. Now, There's no getting around that 100-mile range, so let's talk about it. Yes, 100 miles is probably more than enough for the average person's commute, and because it's a smaller battery, it doesn't take as long to charge as a bigger batteried EV like the Ford Mustang Mach-E or the VW ID4. But come on, 100 miles? That is limiting, and it's going to limit the number of people who are interested in this car. Now, Mazda does say that it will be releasing an MX-30 with a rotary engine like it had in the RX-8 as a range extender. And I think that's going to be absolutely critical to this car catching on with the masses. If you do test drive an MX-30, you'll likely notice that it doesn't really feel like a typical EV. Yeah, it's quiet, and yes, it's quick from a standstill, but it's not blazing fast, and there's no one-pedal driving mode. You can increase the level of regenerative braking, but at its lowest setting, you'd hardly realize it's there at all. Mazda also employs its electronic G-vectoring control in the MX-30, undoubtedly helping this thing feel smooth and composed through all sorts of corners. So it's not fast, but it's enjoyable. I used to ride a bicycle to work almost every day, and I noticed there were usually two types of riders on the road. There was the Tour de France wannabe speed demon, and then there were these folks just pedaling along, enjoying their morning. The Mazda MX-30 is definitely for the latter. We're familiar enough now with the Mazda Connect infotainment system to recognize that it's a little bit of form over function. The display is incredibly handsome, but the rotary controller definitely takes some getting used to, and it's really designed for one driver who has taken the time to input all of their settings and their favorites. Case in point, if I were to drive this car on a regular basis, I would just punch in all my favorite radio stations as favorites and use the little star button below the volume knob to jump between them. But my fiance hates my favorite music. So if she were to get in this car, she wouldn't be able to just easily browse through satellite radio and pick a channel that she wanted to listen to. She'd be stuck with my garbage. Luckily, the Mazda MX-30 has your full complement of Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. We also have a great Bose 12-speaker premium audio system, we have a head-up display, and we have a couple USB ports, although admittedly, they took me a little while to find. They're kind of hidden underneath the center console down here. On the safety front, every MX-30 gets eye active sense, automatic emergency braking, and lane keeping assist. Those things are standard on a lot of cars now, but blind spot monitoring and adaptive cruise control are still optional on a surprising amount of cars, and they're included as standard features here. Regarding the lane keeping assist, some automakers have a system that will kind of jerk you back into the lane, or worse, it'll beep at you. But with Mazda, they just give a subtle vibration to the wheel, which both I and Chris Wardlaw found to be more effective. Now you can read Chris's full review of the Mazda MX-30 on CarGurus.com. And now I think we should get in the rear seat, or really, you should laugh at me while I try and get in the rear seat, because while this car is probably fine for little kids, it's not gonna be great for big kids like me. It's tight in the back seat, and it's a little tricky to get in here via the freestyle doors. However, as my colleague closes the doors behind me, pretty loudly, you'll notice that there's no way for me to get out of here if there's not somebody in the front ready to let me out. Because I can't reach that door handle, and I can't open this door if that one's not open. So what do? Well, there are these buttons on the back of the driver's seat that will very slowly move it forward, and then another button that will very slowly move it, kind of lean it forward. So then maybe I can reach that handle. But if I'm in the passenger seat, there's no buttons. So you're stuck until somebody lets you out of the car. And then once I climb forward and get this open this one, it's still not exactly the most graceful exit. At the rear, the Mazda MX-30 has pretty good cargo space. At 21 cubic feet behind the rear seat, it's somehow bigger than the CX-30? All right, let's talk price. It doesn't really matter. Well, sort of. It doesn't matter to me because Mazda is only selling the 2022 MX-30 in California, and as I look down the barrel at yet another New England winter, I can only remind myself that I do not live in California. But for 2023, Mazda is planning on expanding this vehicle's availability, so maybe we should talk money. The 2022 MX-30, it starts at $33,470 plus a $1,175 destination fee. And then there's a Premium Plus trim, and that one starts at $36,480, again, plus the destination fee. Listen, the MX-30 is not going to be your only car. With 100 miles of range, it's just not equipped to do that for the average person. But with a $35,000-ish price tag, minus a federal tax credit, and maybe a state incentive, well, it's priced like it could be a second car. So the question for me is, do you buy this, or do you buy the similarly priced and way more fun Mini Cooper SE? They both do about 100 miles of range, but admittedly, the Mini is not nearly as practical. I know we're all gonna look at the range and just say, no way. But the mere fact that the MX-30 exists, that's encouraging, because not every automaker has the resources of a Ford or a Toyota or a General Motors or a Volkswagen. And Mazda has an EV architecture in the works, but it decided that it's not gonna sit around and wait for that to be ready before it takes its shot. And this is how a lot of automakers started down the electric road, and I'm very excited to see where the company is in 4 or 5 years. Now, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the CarGurus YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.